Well, hello everybody. My name is Ren, and I'm here with Dallas, and
Hi,
we're going to
everyone.
talk about. Oh yeah, it is a somber day for some things, as far as us, but we're going to start with something fun. So,
Of
Dallas, being our
course.
resident Florida expert, I would like to get your reaction to Ron DeSantis being outmaneuvered by Disney.
There is a saying in Florida that if you get into a fight with the mouse, always bet on the mouse. I really am. The thing is, one, I really can't say for certain if being outmaneuvered like this was inevitable for this little white booted fascist, but it should have been a possibility. But the thing is, I'm firmly convinced I have a four-legged creature that needs my attention and needs to be let out because she can't help it when the attention's not on her. But I am firmly convinced there was a psychiatrist on staff who gave their personal opinion that Ron DeSantis is an uncreative dork surrounded by uncreative dorks, and all you need is just a little creative legal maneuvering to neutralize him. The fact that he was so wrapped up in trying to be president when he can't even be governor properly is his Achilles heel. I would have brought out some pudding to eat too, but I don't have fingers. I have spoons. Thank you. But
Yeah,
it's the fact that Disney did do everything by at least the letter of the law, if not the spirit of the law. When they saw a takeover was imminent, they did what they were supposed to do. Yeah, that they had the meetings publicly. The meetings were advertised in the Orlando Sentinel. It really should not have taken anything for DeSantis to say, "Hey, make sure to bring me a copy of the Orlando Sentinel every morning." It really didn't. He really did. It didn't. It only should have taken that. And then he could have said, "Oh, they're up to some shit. Let me handle it." But no. He assumed that the moment he shook it, he stamped his cute little bootied feet and said, "There's a new sheriff in town," that they were just going to fall over. I don't know. This just tells me the man doesn't know history or doesn't know how the law actually worked. They just handed him a law degree at Harvard because white and male. But the man basically, all he had to do was look in the paper and it was there. Everything was there. So now he's been maneuvered publicly, not even just quietly, but publicly, into a position where most of the time, most people quietly ask for a blindfold and lube. Basically, it's public legal humiliation. And honestly, most people in Florida do not really like inherently the Disney Corporation, but are we enjoying this? Fuck yeah, we are.
that's what gets me about this because much like my whole I don't like Harry and Meghan, I just hate the royals situation, I am not inherently on the side of a $1 trillion corporation having as much power as they do over their own land. So
Yeah, or someone in the Orlando Sentinel brought that up, and they posted their little editorial about it on Twitter. I basically said this: you're right, there is no moral high ground here, but if you're asking me to take sides for the company that made a film about Ruby Bridges versus the administration that banned said film, what the fuck you think I'ma do?
let me put it this way. I don't think there's a moral high ground. I think there is a moral lower flood risk for Disney. Like as far as their moral standing, they get a lower insurance premium based on how high they stand.
Yeah, they basically are realizing, listen, the gays have given us money, the gays have given us clout. we probably should not. They should not be the first people we piss off. Listen, they and the Disney been known this since the 90s. They faced down the Southern Baptist Convention and did not fucking blink. And as someone who
more to say about the Southern Baptist Convention later in the episode, believe me.
And as someone who grew up Southern Baptist, the fact that this we have a really well developed persecution complex, but it's the fact that they weren't even trying to be mean about not blinking. They just simply said, "We have concern. You have concerns? Great. So do we. I mean, we're parents too, but they pay money just like you do. We gave you Night of Joy. We gave you Night of Joy. They get gay days. The conversation is closed."
I just appreciate the legal outmaneuvering, especially the use of something, particularly that most law students I have ever talked to either hate or just don't
fucking
think it's stupid that we even have to learn it at this point.
I think it's more, it's one of those things that it's in the right. This is why I keep saying Disney came to the conclusion that Ron DeSantis was an uncreative dork and surrounded by uncreative dorks and did what they did. They wanted to say, fuck it. We're not just going to be openly we're not just going to rub it in your face. We're going to be creative about it. The party line, and this is where I'm going to get into slightly, like only a little bit into my royal bag, only a little bit. The party line, most Republicans are weird little royalists, but only because the royal family is white and they have stubbornly and stupidly turned their backs on the biracial member who happened to join. They turned their backs and left her and her husband to the media wolves because fuck you. That's why we didn't really want any darkies in here, but here we are.
You don't go against the family.
Yeah. And he went against the family because he thought as the spare, it wasn't going to matter. And face it, the Republicans love cruelty. The Republicans love racism. Everyone loves drama, but the Republicans love family drama that involves white cruelty on Black people or Black presenting people. So the party line, the cultural party line has always been fuck Meghan and the clique she claims. So and Disney ain't stupid. They know it. They've been kikiing with the Sussexes for a minute. So to include a clause in a contract that is actually semi-traditional is an extra creative little knife to remind a Republican, you are going to have to wait on the death of a person that is not entirely white in order for you to get what you want. Suck on it.
There's a certain amount of the outmaneuvering has the certain amount of boastfulness, like Bane. I was born in the darkness, shit going on here. And I have to say,
it was very much we were born in like, oh, you have $795 an hour lawyers? That's cute. We got 3 floors worth, and not even all of them were Ivy League. We have Marie who went to a community college and then to a Midwestern law school ain't nobody heard of. She's the one who came up with that clause.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. The idea had to have come from a lawyer who just turned to their buddy working in the same department going, wait, wouldn't it be hilarious? And that's where it came. Because, you know, it's not like the rule against perpetuities is all that complex. It's really not. It's just the sort of legendarily esoteric thing that they've decided to keep testing on for some stupid fucking reason.
I took one law school class and that somehow that ended up being a 15-minute discussion. So
And it doesn't have to be.
It really don't, but we were just so intrigued by all the applications of it that I'm like, oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, the discussion has to be this long. You pick anybody who's alive when you write the contract, and then 21 years after they're dead. There you go. Boom. That's the discussion. And it becomes this thing that everybody wants to forget about as soon as they're done law school because they're never going to use it. And someone along the line said, wait a minute, I got an idea.
Yeah.
I got an idea.
Yeah.
And
what if we, I'm firmly convinced everyone thinks, oh, Disney's got this room full of lawyers, they're all Ivy Leagues and this. I'm like, nah. Some of these people are community college transfers. They're just clever and weird and creative. And and sometimes when you're dealing with an uncreative dork like Ron DeSantis, you do need the community college transfer night school motherfucker who worked the front desk at a hotel.
Yeah. Just because the federal judiciary is made up of Ivy Leaguers doesn't mean that that's the end all be all of creative and intelligent and incredible.
It's not. God Almighty, it's not. One of the few good things one can say about the vice president and the president, neither of them are really true Ivy Leaguers in any way, shape, or form. Who has fucking heard of Hastings Law? Nobody. No goddamn body. Ain't nobody heard of no goddamn Hastings Law School.
I had never heard of it before.
That's where Kamala went to law school. Nobody fucking heard of it. It's a part of the California university system. It's accredited. It's there.
And how many people knew that Delaware had a law school?
Facts. I fucking did not know that. So, this should remind people, you don't need to go to Ivy League to stun on motherfuckers. You really don't.
Well, it's just, it goes back to, the same saying they say about doctors or lawyers. What do you call the doctor or the lawyer who graduated last of their class? Doctor or lawyer?
Doctor, Esquire. Same thing.
Yeah. Same thing, and it's the same as where you graduate from. One law program is as good as the next, really.
It's really just about the professors and the connections you make. That's what you're paying. That's really what you're really paying for, the connections. You're paying for getting you into the room.
Yeah, you want to get into better rooms, you do need to go to an Ivy League school, but you want to be a better lawyer, you can really go anywhere.
Fucking anywhere.
About what's in you. It's about
right now, I'm looking at the fact that a lot of that people that only law school I think that's going to actually survive all of this bullshit, U of M Law School, because it's private. UM Law, it'll probably survive because it will probably survive the brain drain and not much else. Maybe Lynn University, but I don't think Lynn has a law school.
Before to move on from the Disney thing, but before we move on to other subjects, let's talk about the Florida brain drain a little.
Yeah.
And let's talk about what's going to be happening over the next several years.
Right now, it's currently 1 in 8 high school seniors are saying, fuck Florida, not staying. What people need to know is that the Florida prepaid college program, which is something that the Florida state has been shilling from before I was born. I attended college partially on it. It's this thing where you pay into it. It's in the neighborhood of a 529 or a Roth or something. It's one of those kind of funds you pay into from the time a kid's born. The thing with the Florida prepaid is it's portable. You can take that motherfucker any goddamn where you want. So you're going to have the Florida prepaid kids saying, I don't got to stay here, so I'm going to go. Personally, what I think would be an honest is that maybe some smaller schools in states like Michigan, California, I would say primarily Michigan and California, especially California, since California does have one of the largest university systems in probably the Western Hemisphere. I think you need to start looking into case by case offering in-state tuition to Florida students based on extenuating circumstances. Like, are you openly LGBTQ? Yes. Are you Black and active in your community, and you are a Divine Nine legacy? Yes.
Are you a journalist who had to register to criticize DeSantis?
Are you a journalist? Are you the child of a teacher? Are you the child of a teacher, or are you child of someone who's LGBTQ? Child Divine Nine legacy, where your designated college, UCF, they might be trying to, or U of F. Yeah, I said it. U of F, they might be trying to push their Divine Nines off campus or not funding their Divine Nines. I think schools and smaller schools, start with the smaller schools, start looking. I think they need to start looking at saying, hey, listen, depending on your situation, if you come from Florida, we will give it to you in state for 2 years. It's not perfect, but I think states need to start looking into it, seeing what kind of seeing how their budget can hold it. I mean, yeah, it'll probably start off with not fun states like Minnesota, but I have a feeling you get some trans kid from Marin County who's trying to get their damn degree. They will be more than happy to truck they ass to cold ass Minnesota if they're getting in-state tuition.
Yeah. And I know that Pennsylvania right now is blue. It's purple state.
It's safe for now, but it's in flux.
But
like
generally, it does have protections for LGBTQ people, specifically trans people. A lot of other states don't. And I would think that Pennsylvania should make a really good attempt to try to get a lot of younger college-age students from Florida into
from Florida, from Georgia, from a lot of states that are now kind of under risk, because it's like you've got about up to 400 statutes spread out among about 25, 35 states. You're going to need to make, I think a lot of these university systems, and I know that a lot of them are very beleaguered, are going to need to make room. But the thing is, I think what they're waiting on is the NCAA. I think I'm going to be honest. They're waiting on the NCAA. If the NCAA cares enough.
I didn't even think about that. Not because, I don't want you to think it was a scoff. It was a laugh.
I know. No, it was a, oh shit. Yeah, it was kind of the, oh shit. Yeah, you're right. Because honestly, what if you start getting blue chip recruits, not necessarily in big sports like football or basketball, a blue chip gymnastics recruit or volleyball recruit saying, yeah, I'm not going to U of F, or I'm not going to FSU because have you seen Ron DeSantis?
Well, the Florida brain drain has started, as you said. It's 1 in 8 students now.
So I think it's going to be gradual, but it will pick up. It's going to be it's going to start from the top down. You're going to see your white liberal students with money exiting, and possibly exiting permanently. Like the whole like junior moves out first, sister moves out next. Parents are like, why the fuck are we still here? And they're gone.
It's something I honestly hope for, and I don't in normal situations, because when it comes to, say, like Georgia, I don't want there to be a mass exodus in Georgia because it's becoming more purple.
Yes.
And you don't want a mass exodus there.
No, you don't.
But when it comes to Florida, the Democrats basically ceded Florida. We left. We're going to put, like, basically non-entities such as Charlie Crist and Val Demings up and say, all right, here you go. I got no money for you. Try your best.
Do what you can. And and I mean, it's like they've got one effective motherfucker. Lord Anna works her ass off, and that's it. Like, that's it. Anna Eskamani works her ass off, and that's all we get. And
I saw recently one, somebody who was running for, city council in Tampa, even, like, just getting absolutely no support. And, like, the Democrats really need to be working on a local level, from the ground up in Florida, because Florida was not an inherently losable state. It was
It's
a purple
really not.
and
It's
it's
really not.
a lot of people that doesn't need to be ignored. Like, yes, you can just basically leave California to do what it does, and it'll be fine. California,
Yeah. California gonna stay blue. Don't worry about it. You literally, I hate to you, they are the autopilot that Elon Musk cannot deliver. They're the autopilot Elon Musk cannot deliver for the Democrats.
But they really don't like spending money in the strangest ways. Like, who was the man who was running against Ron Johnson? I can't remember his name. Yeah, right. I mean, like, maybe if they had spent some money on him, we both remember him.
Yeah, I want to say Mandela Barnes or Michaela Barnes. I think that was it.
Maybe. I think you're right. But yeah, they spent really next to nothing on him.
No.
And the state Democratic Party in New York also just
that's absolutely shit the bed epically, resulting in, let's put it like this. Mets fans are very forgiving as to who they let roll with them. But the moment that man put a Mets jersey on, basically everybody's like, no, you cannot sit with us. You are not one of us. They, like, for opening day, he tried to say go Mets. They were not the Mets fans were not having it. Period. The Mets fans were not having it.
It's like, I get it. I get you want to pretend that you're one with the outer boroughs people, but you are not one with the outer boroughs people.
There's like 5 people in Staten Island that still care about you, and that's it. And that's only because you wear that stupid fucking gun pin like everyone else. Fuck you, honestly.
So let's move on to a less fun topic for a little bit, and that is the yet another school shooting, this time in Nashville.
I'm exhausted.
Very exhausted. I think the first thing I want to say at the outset, is the purpose of this show is that you have people who have been turned away or turned off or left the Republican Party, or people who are still hanging on to the Republican Party but are very disillusioned, have come together to talk about why.
Yeah.
I think one of the reasons why for me is that the insanity on gun control on their part. And I want to interrupt myself here for a second and say that before anyone try to accuse me of some sort of anti-gun nut, I am a gun owner. I am a law-abiding gun owner. I have been for a long time. I don't have any problem with the concept of people owning guns. What I do have a problem with is the concept that anybody should be able to get any gun at any time without any checks, without any protection, without
permit, without any sort of inspection. It's the fact that the fact that when what happens, when the statistical inevitability arrives, as it so often does, you do what that stupid fucking, the gentleman from Tennessee who just said, we're not going to do anything about it. Crime gonna crime. And I'm like, so is this what we're doing? Your kid's homeschooled, therefore it's okay.
Crime is going to crime.
Yeah.
But it isn't going to crime as much.
Exactly.
I realize that people want to have control over their own destiny, so to speak. You can't control when crime is going to strike. No. Like in Japan, people like to use, well, that guy went on that knife attack. I'm like, yeah, I get that you want to be able to defend yourself in the opportunity that happens. My goal is that people who have no history of violence, who have passed inspection, who have training, are able to defend themselves against such a thing. And they are able to own a gun. Like I said, I am fine with the concept of individual gun ownership. I think the Supreme Court basically just made up the right to individual gun ownership out of whole cloth. within the last 20 years, but so be it. That's what they said. My concept is not what the Supreme Court says. My concept is what I think things should be and how we should work to change it. And if it takes amending things, it's never going to happen. But I at least think our society is insane for having it be this way, where someone can go and purchase multiple, high capacity weapons very quickly at such a young age and commit something like this.
And it's the fact that we know what rifles like the AR-15 can do. It turns what would be a somewhat survivable injury, where you'd probably maybe spend a month or two, a couple weeks in the hospital recovering and doing the physical therapy, it turns it into, no, you're not coming back from that. And the fact that it's going to be dragged into schools, we're going to start seeing younger and younger people just, we're basically cutting our own feet off to spite our face, but because Billy Bob doesn't feel like an adequate man unless he has enough weaponry to hold down a small section of Yemen, we got to deal with it. And honestly, it's really just, the book Dying of Whiteness by Jonathan Metzl does cover gun and violence, luckily. And it does cover the fact that,
I'm looking it up now.
It does cover gun violence to a degree. And hopefully, I actually had a brief interaction with him on Twitter, so he implied there might be a follow-up. Crossing my fingers. But it's the idea that because of groups like the NRA, which honestly, because of groups like the NRA, because of lawmakers like the one in Tennessee, we're just going to keep going through this again and again. And all because a chunk of the Republican Party just can't get their mouth off the titty of the NRA. Like, how much per person are you getting here?
That's because the NRA has achieved its goal. No matter how much they are diminished now from what they used to be financially and in power, they have changed the culture so much in the past 70 years. From the days where it was, a club for people who, used to advocate gun safety.
Yeah.
And used to advocate they used to advocate for specific certain kinds of gun control. Yeah. But
it's now become a free for all, because there are people on the right who honestly take the order as a fucking manual or crystal ball.
People definitely like to choose when they become absolute textualist versus, anything else. And
that's
Congress shall make no law. It says, or rather, I reversed myself here. Like, it says shall not be infringed. I'm like, yeah, but it also says Congress shall make no law in the First Amendment, and we have plenty of incursions into the First Amendment.
Lord knows.
It's all about balancing of rights, as everything is. It's the reason why.
Yeah, and
the Supreme Court has constantly found things constitutional, such as defamation law or fucking noise ordinances.
Yeah, and also the fact that right now, the moment, and you've got people who are transgendered who are looking at this and saying, fuck it, I'm getting armed too. Or I was in the military. I was in the military my old life. I might as well. Or I have guns under my dead name. I'm keeping these. It's not, and the thing is, because of that, I will not be shocked if all of a sudden Republicans change their mind on gun control because of this.
Well, there was already one, and I wish I had notated for the show, who was talking about what we need to, when they talk about the mental health crisis, one Republican was talking about how we need to prevent, people who have a mental illness from getting guns. And really, that is their way of saying that they want to control what counts as a mental illness.
Exactly. Yeah. Once they do that, the mental illness thing, it's going to say, well, it's going to get to the point where it's going to be at discretion, which means, the dude on Twitter who's mad at white women who are mad at white women because they actually are exercising autonomy and aren't including him in it. He's going to get a gun. Meanwhile, some jackass is going to say to me, you had a history of panic attacks. We're not giving you a gun.
Yeah, it's basically that. Once they control subcategories and classes that have nothing to do with violence itself from getting guns, then they will be able to control just the type of people they want from getting guns. When really, the only kind of red flag laws that should exist are: do you have a history or propensity towards violence, convictions of violent crime? Basically, it.
Do you have domestic violence? Do you have some domestic violence arrests or arrests, charges, or convictions?
Well, wait a second. Then you'd have to stop most cops from having guns. You can't do that.
Why not? Britain does it.
Yeah, but we'll wait a little bit into it. One of the things that people like Tucker Carlson and J.D. Vance and Marjorie Taylor Douchebag. I keep forgetting. I'm supposed to call her Marjorie Dunning-Kruger. But
I just call her Margie Three Toes.
But either way, one of the things that they were doing is that because the shooter was allegedly trans, and let's just give them the unearned benefit of the doubt and say, for argument's sake, that the shooter has been confirmed to be trans. It hasn't been confirmed, highly suspected, but we'll just assume this for this argument. So you found Sentient Horse Penis, Jack Posobiec, posted this list of 4 mass shooters.
Oh, yeah. I remember responding to that on Twitter, and I basically found a chart that showed four shooters, over 4 possibly trans shooters, 2,000, well over 2, nearly 3,000 cisgendered shooters. I'm supposed to be worried about them 4 motherfuckers right there.
That's kind of it. Statistically, now I did the breakdown on the Apostate Substack, and it was something like, if you go by the earliest year where they suggest that, where they mention the shooter in Denver is transgender, is 2018, you get over 3,000 total mass shootings where there are 4 total shooting victims, regardless of injury or death. And you take the number who are transgender and you extrapolate that out to the population. The lowest estimate I've seen for the number of transgender adults is 0.5%. I've seen it as high as 1.6%. But I want, being as generous, as unearned generous as possible to the people saying this bad faith nonsense. You take 4 of those shooters and they represent less than an 0.1% or less than 0.125% of all mass shootings, from a population that represents 0.5% at the lowest possible estimation. It means that they represent a lower level of threat than the general populace, meaning that they are less violent than the average person. But even aside from that, just fuck you in general, because I think it was Jim Jordan or Ted Cruz said they were going to put that one gun control thing off the table for the day because Democrats are immediately going to politicize the shooting. And what do? Immediately politicize transgender people because they found out.
They politicized they have politicized it, and they're going to use the inherent and undeserved, and I mean this to the core of my soul, the undeserved persecution complex that is basically the miasma that white evangelical Christianity in the United States thrives in.
Josh Hawley said he wants the shooting investigated as a hate crime against Christians. Meanwhile, I believe,
did he even do that for Mother Emanuel? If he did, I'm gonna need him. If he didn't, I'm gonna need him to shut all the way the fuck up and sit all the way the fuck down.
He also spoke out against or voted against hate crime legislation, so he doesn't believe.
Oh, then he definitely needs to. He needs to go stretch and do that little running off thing again that he did so elegantly on January the 6th.
Yeah,
I'm gonna need him to run off. Go find somebody who actually knows what they're doing.
So it's highly disingenuous, but it's part of what Republicans do best, like they did with the Norfolk Southern train crash. Is you have basically this deregulation, spree that was basically the but-for cause, not the proximate cause of a horrible tragedy. And then they blame it on wokeness. Or you have the deregulation of banks that Republicans and Trump and some Democrats pushed for. And then when bad shit happens, blame it on wokeness. Or when a mass shooting happens because we have just got Republicans who for 40 years have been destroying and dismantling every gun control law there is, blame it on trans people. They take something that is basically you can trace the fault back to them,
but
say, well,
they throw a vulnerable population under the bus because they don't want to deal with the accountability.
It's the ultimate two birds, one stone, or one bullet in this situation scenario, which is to say that, well, I don't want people to talk about the fact that we constantly work against every reasonable gun control idea that most Americans want. Most Americans want comprehensive background checks. Most Americans want red flag laws, but whatever.
Most Americans want us to ban assault rifles, but what is we doing? Not that.
Well, they never have a good response to it. It's usually
it's usually because my freedoms, and I just want to be like
going on and yelling back at
Jamal Bowman
about how a good guy with the gun would stop this. I'm like, good guy with the gun didn't stop Parkland. In fact, he ran away. 376 good guys with guns didn't stop Uvalde.
And I'm just like, and I'm just thinking, you want to give teachers guns
because that'll make things great at school. It won't.
You want to give a teacher a gun, and every 6 months, some racist teacher gets fired in Texas, and you want to give those motherfuckers guns? Is you crazy right now?
And of course, there's, the concept that they always bring up, well, we need more school security. School security hasn't stopped any school shootings. It hasn't stopped
school security ain't stopped shit. And actually, sometimes in some cases starts shit. If you've ever looked through the lists of school personnel that have been busted for statutory bad touch or kitty rape, there's a lot of school security motherfuckers in there. I'm just saying.
That's the other angle of the anti-trans agenda, is they want to say that trans people are groomers and pedophiles. And I'm like, I don't know. If you Google just police officer and arrested for child porn or convicted for child porn,
we're going to be, we're going to
cops.
A lot. And the thing is, here's the thing. Here's a little...
Or the 700 plus high-ranking members of the Southern Baptist
Church. All I know is this. Daniel Holtzclaw did not get a 1,000-year sentence from an all-white jury for sexually assaulting Black and brown women for nothing. Robert Galoob did not wait until he was practically on death's door to allow this city, Kansas City, to finally put him away for assault, murder, and rape of Black and brown women for nothing. There are still serial killers out there who prey on sex workers and women who are not necessarily white, cis, able-bodied, married, or heterosexual. They are still out there. They're just cops now. I said what I said. They're just cops now.
It's a great place to work if you want to just get away with doing crime against
Basically, people. Yeah. If you want to get away with killing Black people, or killing people under mental distress.
I mean, you see it in the armed security guards and the high level of arrest rate against Black and brown children in schools anytime they increase
Talk about it.
Of security guards or armed security or cops in schools. They say it protects against shooting. This school shooting in Nashville was the first time I recall that the cops actually stopped the shooter.
They actually did what needed to be done.
Yeah, out of how many school shootings? Congratulations for doing your job this time.
And honestly, I'm gonna be honest. I'm willing to bet the reason this worked was because this was in a small private school in a suburban neighborhood. Small, because most of these schools are usually maybe have a student body of I believe this particular school was K through 8, probably a student body of less than 500. This is not a huge school. I'm not saying that cops are Superman, because they're fucking not. But I'm saying this was they performed to the adequate level that we as taxpayers pay them to. They performed to the adequate level we asked them to. Would they have been able to pull off that level of performance in a school in inner city Nashville that was majority Black and brown? I would probably say the fuck they wouldn't. This was literally the perfect situation for them, and they were able to pull it off. Good for them. Good for them. But when it actually becomes a serious multi-hour emergency in which those buckets may have to be used, those blankets may have to be used, I don't think you're going to get the same minimal loss of life. You're not.
That's just it. This curious, a good guy with a gun has never stopped a school shooting. Armed school security has never stopped a school shooting before it happened. It has, and this is the first time I recall that the police ever ended a school shooting, at least in a reasonable period of time.
Exactly.
So you want to prevent.
That's why I'm not impressed with everyone's talking about the first response. Girl, bye.
It just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's and what I mean by it is what it is that we're going to keep.
It's going to keep
what should be done, and it's not going to happen. That guy from Tennessee was right about one thing. They're not going to do anything.
Yeah, they're literally not going to do anything about it. The Democrats are going to try, and they're not going to. At this point, I've always said, if I find myself injured in a school shooting, injured in a mass casualty event, I want someone to walk into Congress with an iPhone and airdrop the photos of my injuries to every congressman in there. I want a billboard. If I live through it, I want a billboard of me showing my fucking wounds. If I don't live through it, I want a live stream of my autopsy. I want people to see. I want people to see what this looks like. I do not, at this point, I want, because I know there's a law against biohazards, I can't have my corpse dumped at the door, at Ron DeSantis's door. That's a crime, unfortunately. But I'm gonna have my police photo is gonna get mailed there. My police photo is gonna get mailed. The full autopsy report. I want somebody to read it. In other words, I want my death. If it is done if I die this way, I want it to be in living color. Like that scene in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., where you can almost touch the wet blood and flesh chunks. I am not interested in, if I get my face blown off, pull an Emmett Till and have an open casket. I don't give a fuck.
I think there's nothing that I could possibly say after that that would put a cap on that discussion.
I mean, at this point, it's going to take that. America, people say Russians hate to be embarrassed. No. Americans truly do hate to be embarrassed. They do hate to be embarrassed. We do have a national sense of shame. It's only been stoked maybe once or twice. And yes, Emmett Till was one of the times that stoked our sense of shame, our national sense of shame on the world stage. Abu Ghraib should have stoked our sense of national shame. It didn't.
Well, no, because we're fine with it as a nation. We're fine with Abu Ghraib. We're fine with Guantanamo Bay. That's why Ron DeSantis is going to be fine.
Yeah, Ron DeSantis is going to bounce back post. I mean, yes, we are dealing with Trump's indictment, but Ron DeSantis will bounce back. He tortured non-white men. No one cares about that. It's
because fascism is revelatory of violence against people
who aren't part of the group. They enjoy the violence. There's a reason Adam Seward was able to write The Cruelty Is a Point. And for all I know, he might be working on a fucking sequel at this point. And the fact is, I will not be shocked if the church takes up cruelty against LGBTQ people, cruelty against non-conforming women, cruelty against people of color, especially if they are non-conforming, cruelty against non-Christians, if they are Protestant. It will extend to cruelty against Catholics. They will find the biblical justification for it, and they will go forward with it. They do not care. There is a pastor who literally said, "Why are you feeding the hungry? They aren't crippled. They don't deserve it." There is a problem. America, there is a problem. And yes, the problem is in the church. The call is coming from inside the motherfucking house.
I don't think belief is a cancer, but I think religion, capital R, religion, is a cancer. And
faith should be free, but faith right now is being held back in a non-consensual relationship with religion.
I think faith should be personal, and faith should be something that you generally just shut the fuck up about, never proselytize, and never evangelize, and never try to convert. Because what's the point if you have to convert?
And
what's the point of faith if you have to be convinced?
And considering the fact that Christians are doing the opposite of convincing people of a goddamn thing. There is a reason why it is easy to. There is a reason why I can find evidence to say they will know we are Christians by our hate. It's not, this is to a level where people should be concerned, but they're not. That's what's kind of scaring. That's what's scaring me, at least. I don't feel comfortable. There's a reason I call myself an uninstitutionalized Christian, because I don't feel comfortable being part of that institution anymore.
I'm Presbyterian, but it's kind of at this point, like, I have been dissuaded from attendance in church. I've been dissuaded from. It's not any. I have not found any church in the last 5 years that I have felt comfortable,
of course not,
being a part of, and that doesn't really affect my overall faith, but it definitely makes me feel foolish for having it. And so there's that.
Yeah, and in my case, it's more the culture where you come. If you're a person of color, your faith tradition is coming from somewhere different. And I always and I honestly feel that as a person of color, walking away from your faith is understandable, because in many cases you were colonized into it 5 or 6 generations back, and who you really are as a religious, as a soul, may have been lost, may have been denied you.
It's like that. I lost it. I had something. I lost it. It was something. It was something about Christianity in Ethiopia, and I had it, and it like slipped through my fingers.
I think that's literally the only place in Africa in which Christianity was not imposed by a European rule.
Yeah,
it's pretty much the only place where where people of color. It's pretty much one of the only places on earth where people of color were given Christianity and they accepted it on a consensual basis, not on the edge. Huh?
Thank you for saving my
and not at the edge of a sword. Ethiopia is one of the only places where, a lot of Christians talk about going to Israel. That's cool, but I'm not really, as I've grown older, I'm not as interested in that. I'm like, I'd rather go to Ethiopia, because to me that seems like, as a place that, like I said, Christianity came there on a consent basis.
It had to. There was no. The Italians tried so hard and failed so hard for decades.
I'm not even sorry for y'all for that. No sympathy whatsoever. Zero. You tried. You failed. It's for the best, really.
We were terrible at colonizing.
Yeah, you were.
But it didn't help. It didn't help that we tried, but that we chose the least conquerable place in the world. Ethiopia was, I guess, one of those places you only conquer it if it lets you. And they don't let anybody do that shit. They really don't. And they don't let anyone do that shit. So let's take the last 7 minutes we got to talk about the big story of
oh boy.
Because there really isn't much to say.
There really isn't. They haven't unsealed it. I've heard rumors. I've heard this is what I thought I heard. And then, of course, April Fools happened on Saturday, and I thought I knew something, but it turns out I ain't know shit. It was wonderful.
All I can say is 34 counts, all but one of them misdemeanor. One of them is felony. We don't know what the underlying felony that made the business fraud charge a felony is. I assume it's campaign finance, but it might be something. It might be state campaign finance based.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's state campaign finance based. And I think because it seems like for him changing residency probably was his attempt to avoid it. That's my theory, and I'm going to stick to that.
Overall, I find the entire thing to be the weakest of the 3 different investigations that are going on against him.
Yeah.
So but all the same, too,
Still
it's
fun.
the one that may have the most staying power because any Republican president, including Trump himself, could come in and he could pardon himself, even though it's a pretty dubious kind of thing, or a different
It's a
Republican
state crime.
president.
I don't think he can federally pardon. That's the good
Not
part.
not for New York's investigation, the one he was
Yeah.
just talking on, but for the other two, these involve
Yeah.
federal criminal charges that can be nullified, and so they may be stronger cases. Now, I'm sorry, I'm very wrong. Georgia involves state law too.
Yeah.
It involves federal law and state law. I think it's a mixture. I really don't trust me on that, but
Well,
so-
all I know is that Fannie Willis is running on a clock and she knows it. And that's the one that I think will stick, and I think it's like if she can get it done, I think she can make it stick. But the thing is the Republican legislature knows that too. So it's kind of like, dude, I know that she needs to get it right, but I'm sure she knows that a bunch of old white men do not want her to get it right.
This is why I think that while New York has the weakest case against Trump, it is the one with the longest staying power.
Yeah, that's the one that could be the one that is going to be the remora that's going to suck him dry.
So, I think with Georgia, they probably have the most evidence, because even with the confidential documents thing, it's strictly federal, and intent plays a large part of it, and it's a lot harder to prove intent. Now, intent plays a large part of it with Georgia too, but we have that entire 47-minute phone call and him saying,
"We've all listened to
find the 10,000 votes," and their defense will have to hinge on him saying, "Yeah, but what I meant by find is discover these votes that have."
Yeah, he's gonna have to make up a defense that's gonna make no goddamn sense, but he's gonna just have to cram one in.
Yeah. So look, I don't think Trump is a wealthy white man who is not going to face actual consequences. He's not going to spend a minute in jail. Even if he gets convicted of the felony count in New York, he is not going to spend time in jail. Because
that man is not going to Sing Sing. He's not going to Dannemora. He's not going to Sing Sing.
That's not what happens to wealthy white people unless they get caught on microphone confessing to a murder accidentally during
or if they steal from other wealthy white people or wealthier white people.
Elizabeth Holmes isn't going to jail yet, but she isn't going to jail in general because she stole money from her customers. She's going to jail because she stole from her investors. He was never convicted of defrauding her customers.
But like I said, I think if you steal money from other wealthy white people, I think if the closest thing he's going to probably get is like house arrest. And is that going to neuter him politically? No.
Suspended sentence is my bet.
Suspended. That's also solid, but it's not going to. And unfortunately, I don't think Ron DeSantis is creative or charismatic enough to overcome it. I don't think he is, but I've seen stranger things happen. The people with the money in the party are starting to throw their cash behind DeSantis. So it's hard to say that, we're out of the woods with him.
He waited too long.
Yeah, and the fact that Asa Hutchinson threw his hat, I'm like, I forgot. I didn't even know Asa Hutchinson was still alive.
The more people go into this ring, the more likely it is that Trump will win, because it is nobody has strong feelings about the other 60. The other 60% of voters, or 65% of voters, don't have strong opinions about who the president is going to be. So they will split themselves against everybody running against Trump. And Trump's solid 33 to 35% of supporters will carry him through the early states long enough to make him the front runner.
Of course.
Then eventually he will just be there.
And we will have to deal with this bullshit again. Only thing that we can count on is the stress from this overwhelming his body. That's literally all you can count on. That's all you can count on, the stress from all of this over proving to be too much for him. And that would be, honestly, that is literally all you really can. I hate to say it. That's literally all you can literally pray for at this point.
Electorally, Biden, the states where Biden crucially beat Trump, he only beat him by just a little bit in each of those states.
Yeah.
When people want to bring the 7 million spread and then want to bring the total electoral vote spread,
but it's just it was a sniper shot of a win.
Yeah,
it was a sniper shot.
So
it was one good sniper shot that really just did all it needed to do. Right now, I need Wisconsin to act right.
Oh, God. Yeah, we're going, regardless of what the results are going to be, we're going to be talking about the Wisconsin Supreme Court vote next episode, especially considering the Republican legislature has already talked about impeaching the Democrat, if she wins. So
what?
They don't need it for what? They don't need it for what? They don't need it for what?
For why?
We'll just do it. They have,
Sorry, I've turned into my mother, but
it reminds me of there's this little town. I don't know why I haven't forgotten the story, but I haven't forgotten the story. Betsy McCrae in this little town of Kinloch, Missouri, outside of Ferguson, won the mayoral race like a year after Ferguson, and she was locked out of the.
Was Betsy McCrae a black woman? Of course.
But she was locked out of the town hall and then impeached by the legislature for voter fraud. And she basically, despite winning the mayorship, they claimed that she committed voter fraud, and then they threw her out. And it's just one of those things, like these little coups happen.
What in the Wilmington?
Look up Betsy McCrae and Kinloch, Missouri, and you'll be able to see there's not a lot of reporting that happened about it, but it's just a story that stuck with me for years. And so,
I'm just still sitting here just going, this is why I'm firmly convinced there are no ghosts, because honestly, if ghosts were real and ghosts were the spirits of people with unfinished business, I don't know if there'd be white people after that.
To be fair, I don't even know if her opponent was white or if, what the makeup of the city was. But all I know is that she won the mayoralship, and then they said, no, there was voter fraud, and kicked her out. And so that was basically it. And so that's when Republicans say they'll just impeach the new Supreme Court justice in Wisconsin, I think, yeah, they might just do that. Because it's worked for them every time they have done these. Basically, they're really great at coups. They're just dynamite at it.
Yeah, it's just, and now that and it's watching the January 6th hearings is where I realize if like there's 2 or 3 things that went wrong for the insurrectionists that should not have gone wrong. But if they had, like, the fact that if Eugene Goodman doesn't get to Mitt Romney, that crowd has Mitt Romney. It may not mean much. I mean, it's just Mitt Romney. But that, as strong and clean living as Mitt Romney is, they would have beaten that man to death.
That's what they were there for.
If Mike Pence...
they were just tourists. They were just tourists going for,
Yeah, they were just tourists going sightseeing. It would have they just tripped. It was an accident. He got scared. He got trampled. It happened.
To which I say to Tucker Carlson, the shooter in Nashville was also just a tourist who was sightseeing.
Oh yeah, no, they were just like looking through the place. That's it. That's all they were doing. I mean, if Eugene Goodman doesn't see Romney and signal and distracts the crowd, if Mike Pence, for all his lack of charisma, takes his usual route, like those two things alone, you're talking about a totally different event here. You're talking about bloodshed, which Trump was comfortable with. Well, so, I mean, it's literally, those are literally the two little cog events that if they don't do that, they're fucked. And I'm just still sitting here like, and we were part of this party?
Hard to believe, but then again, I mean, it's where I was born and how I grew up, and I stayed there for a while. And
I swear to God, if I am allowed a moment, if there is a waiting room, an antechamber in which you may accidentally stumble upon a member of two of hell's denizens, it's on site with Ronald Reagan. I'm gonna beat his ass for hoodwinking my family. I'm beating his ass. I'm beating his old Alzheimer's ass. I give no fucks. If I am waiting in line and I see him, beating his ass.
In fairness, like I always say, I don't think there's a single president outside of Jimmy Carter who is going to see heaven. You'll see a lot more besides Reagan there.
But no, he's on site. That one is on site. Everyone else, I'm really not. I mean, him and Jackson definitely. Probably Jefferson too, because, sir, you're a pedophile and you need to understand that.
Yeah. I think that, you probably get, I mean, John Adams probably gets a cushier spot in purgatory, maybe, one of the cushier spots in hell, but generally speaking, and I've heard good things about John Quincy Adams. So, yeah, but I haven't read his biography, and as much as I am a lover,
yeah, and it's like I want to check in with Indigenous Twitter before you extend any grace.
I've heard he wasn't bad to Indigenous people, but that could mean anything. That really could mean anything.
He only broke like 3 treaties as opposed to the usual like 12. Like it's like at this point you just want to. If you hear anything about a president, you're like, no. I need to check with Indigenous Twitter. I need to check with like the Indigenous before I say this person's cool.
Well, I think that about does it for today. Let me just check the feed before we end, and it looks like breaking news: Henry Kissinger somehow